Pledge of Allegiance.
Smaller, better.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Welcome to the Portage City Council work study for March 15th. And we've got our guests from Kitsap County here. Gentlemen can join us at the table. We've got plenty of room. You don't have to sit in the back, in the cheap seats.
You want me to?
Go ahead, Nick. You've got anything you want to say?
Yeah, so we have Jeff Rowe, Katrina Knudsen, and Dave Greetham from the county here to tell us about their revised preferred alternative for the comprehensive plan UGA boundary for Port Orchard and land use designations. And so I know that they've listened to the city, they've met with a lot of property owners in the area, and I think they've come up with a pretty good compromise that gets the city a lot of what it was asking for, as well as respecting the rights of property owners in the area. And so I'll let Katrina provide an explanation as it relates to the map and the white paper provided.
Great. Thanks for having us again this evening. It's nice that the time change has provided some extra light outside. That's always nice. Your clerk was kind enough to make copies of, you have the preferred alternative map with you, but I also provided the alternative 2, which was the smallest alternative that we evaluated in our environmental impact statement. So I'll go ahead and pass those around.
So how does that differ from what is the current preferred? You'll get to that?
I will go through
All right.
that, yep.
Sorry.
It's okay. We did provide also a white paper to Nick that he's included in your packet. And basically this was a succinct way for us in 7 pages to describe the issue that we're solving with our comprehensive plan updates. Really looking at annexations, what the county's responsibilities are, what the city's responsibilities are, going over the targets and our capacities. So if you haven't read this, I would recommend that you take a look at that. But just some highlights from that. Between 2007 and 2011, the city of Port Orchard's incorporated boundary increased by 89%. And that's approximately 3,500 acres within those 4 years. What that means is, and it's described in the white paper, that not only did you take the existing people and the existing jobs in those 3,500 acres, you also annexed in the demand or the future population and employment for those areas. So that is where some of these number problems came to that we brought to you during the last meeting. As of our no action alternative, which I don't have the no action map, but it was provided to you last time. The city of Port Orchard incorporated area was 16% above its population target. The urban growth area was 3% above its population target. And in terms of employment, the city was 67% above its target for employment, and the urban growth area was 219% above target. As we describe in the memo, there's no bright line in growth management, as the county definitely knows. However, within a 5% ratio above or below is generally an accepted range for capacity and demand, which is something that we are trying to achieve in all of our urban growth areas. This problem was noted in 2012 when our plan was remanded to us by the Growth Management Hearings Board. We put policies into our comprehensive plan at that time that this process would be the time to address the capacity demand issues. Also within the memo on page 3 and 4, we talk about targets and how those are distributed through the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council. I do want to note that although there was some testimony that we've heard through our comprehensive plan that Port Orchard is not receiving a high ratio of population and employment, Port Orchard is actually allocated the second highest net population growth, and it's allocated the third highest net employment growth within the whole county. And for the population, you are second to Bremerton, and in terms of employment, Bremerton receives the highest, then Silverdale, and then Port Orchard for employment. So that is also described in the memo. We talked a lot about the Puget Sound Regional Council and how Vision 2040 impacts this, and that's on page 5 and 6. And then the remainder of it is really just talking about the process and what the county is responsible for. The purpose of providing you with the alternative 2, and again, thank you so much for making the copies of this. The alternative 2 boundary was really the smallest boundary in terms of size that we have evaluated in our environmental impact statement. Based on that, at your meetings as well as our public hearings, we heard from a lot of folks on Bethel Road, some folks on Mile Hill, but we really took, under Charlotte's, Commissioner Grado's guidance, the city's letter, which outlined your priority, was very helpful to us in trying to come to a compromise that was both good for the county, the city, and the property owners. And the boundary and the preferred alternative for your urban growth area, we really feel is a very defensible, good urban growth area for now with the growth targets that we have to live under for this plan. The city, your priorities in the letter to us were Bethel Road was the #1 priority, followed by Sydney Road, followed by Mile Hill. So on the preferred alternative, if you compare alternative 2 with all of the Bethel Road corridor being in the rural area, you'll notice now on the preferred alternative that we've been able to, we took a little bit more from the urban growth area over by Phillips, where people testified to us at our commissioner meetings that they wanted to be out of the urban growth area. And we were able to take that capacity and put that into the Bethel Road area. So I believe it's all but 4 lots are now back into the urban growth area along Bethel Road. We also went and looked at not just looking at our assessor data, which is what we did previously. We actually had staff go down and look at the businesses, figure out exactly where they were, what types of businesses they are. So every single business along the Bethel Road corridor that is existing or has permits in our process right now are zoned either urban commercial or urban industrial. The one exception to this is across the freeway along Bethel Burley, there's a landscaping business over there that is now rural industrial. The capacity numbers would have put us over 5% there. Their business is legally conforming under rural industrial, and they've been notified of this change. You also heard from a property owner here on the east side who would like to put a slaughtering facility in on the very south end of Bethel. That use is consistent with our rural industrial use, and so we have, since it is a vacant piece of property without a permit in our pike, it's being proposed for rural industrial at this time. However, every other business owner along here, and we've talked to probably all of them, are satisfied with the process and where they are now. Now, that being said, we know that the city would have liked to have had this be mixed use of the entire area along Bethel. So this gets us most of the way to where the compromise is perfect. However, the good thing about having this area in the urban growth area now is that when the next round of targets come out, there will not be the argument about should the UGA be expanded. The urban growth area is the same size, and at that point, the county will again work with the city to determine if you want your new employment demand to go to Bethel or if you want it to go to Sydney. So we'll have the same exercise over again.
Can I ask a question at this point? If we annex that section of Bethel, I know that when we annex, we take the property in with the zoning designation that is most like the cities. But once it gets in the city, we can rezone it if we choose. That's a question.
Well, the city council can zone the property as it sees fit at the time of annexation. That can be a different use, although that could put you sideways in terms of your capacity and population allocations and could affect future PSRC certifications. But I think in the interim between comp plan updates, it's probably not a major issue. Would you guys agree?
The cities have different abilities than counties do. We're responsible for the sizing of areas. So it is true that you could take it in as this and redesignate it as something else. Other cities, Bremerton's done that. The next time it would come up would be during the next buildable lands report, and it would show an issue that would have to be addressed during the next comp plan. That being said, with Vision 2040 being updated to Vision 2050, the city could go for an additional target or allocation of employment that necessarily wouldn't put things off kilter. So there's variables, but with it remaining this way, there's more options for the city to do what it needs to do as the plans progress. The other area that we were able to do is the east side of Sydney here. We were able to get those properties in so that there's a logical boundary for the city here. We heard pretty significant testimony from the folks around on the west side of Sydney that they would like to remain rural. So we left them out at this time. However, these property owners here will be notified that they're going to remain in the urban growth area, so that would give the city a logical boundary all on the east side along Sydney. We also heard from the Binns family on this industrial parcel up here. They've made an investment to extend sewer and to get access through this industrial park. They are in the process of submitting for development permits with us, and therefore we've included them, kept them in here based on their, the estimate they gave us was close to $1 million with the sewer extension and the access and all the development permit costs. And then really Mile Hill, it had to stay the same in order for Bethel and Sydney to get what was requested. However, similar to Bethel, we did go along Mile Hill and properly associate the businesses all along Mile Hill that were retracted to either rural commercial or rural industrial based on what their business is. The only thing that we heard was that our rural commercial zone, the buffer from the lot line was too restrictive, so people weren't able to expand their business, and so we're looking at reducing that based on a compatibility index in our code that you'll be able to look at in April. So we feel that we have done our very best in this, and I just jotted down some of the numbers before we came down here. In terms of population, the no action, the city and UGA combined were 1,600 people over. In the preferred alternative, we are 70 people over. So we're really, really close in terms of population.
And is that on a percentage basis, a couple percent? With that?
It's probably 1%.
1%, yeah. So we're well within the 5%
Yes.
you were.
So we're really good on population. In terms of employment, we started out about 5,000 jobs over. The city was 81% and remains 81% over depending on what the plan does. But again, counties and cities have different rules. But the urban growth area was 219% over capacity. With the preferred in front of you today, if we've taken the 5,000 and it's about 2,500 jobs over, with the urban growth area only being 5% over. So in terms of defensibility and planning for the future, the county, we're within 5% for employment and 1% with population. So we're in a really defensible position with this going forward.
Trina, may I add a comment on employment? Commissioner Greedo couldn't join us, but she said if nothing else, if we could convey to the council that recognizing employment is still the one that's the higher number, she's got a keen interest in working with the city on workforce planning and employment issues, and offered her joint cooperation to work with council as much as you guys wish moving forward on that issue. So she just want to make sure that was out on the record tonight.
Thank you. I just greatly appreciate the efforts you guys went to listen to us, take our concerns under consideration, and listen to the public. I know I attended your guys' public hearing, at least one of them, and you've definitely taken into consideration many of the people, the concerned parties. So, other comments, guys? So this is.
If there are no other comments, I was going to suggest that the city council may want to send a letter of thanks or appreciation for taking into consideration our concerns. I think that would be helpful to the county in terms of defending their position, and also we've put something into the record that says that we weren't happy with what they proposed, and now they've addressed it, and I think that would be helpful if the city council is okay with it.
I'm comfortable with that. Are we allowed to say that we're content with something that's so contentious, or do we want to tone it down and say we're not terribly dissatisfied? Much less dissatisfied than we were.
However you put it, we'll appreciate what you said.
Well, you guys.
Regardless of the outcome, I appreciate the effort.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And listening.
If nothing else.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's a very nice now.
Collaboration that
If I can
we
say that.
both enjoyed.
And also, just so that you know, we have a number of reclassification requests that we have hearings this week and next week. Postcards were sent out to all of those people. I think there's 3 abutting the urban growth area. So all of those have been postcarded with a 400-foot radius in urban, 800-foot radius in rural. And then by Friday of this week, anyone who is proposed to change at all in the preferred alternative, every one of those property owners will receive a postcard coming with our upcoming opportunities for public input. So there shouldn't be a question about, if there weren't people involved in this, they'll at least know how to stay involved in our process.
And very tentatively, the first planning commission hearings are the 26th and 28th of April. Then we would roll into board work studies and board hearings in early June. Tentatively the 6th and the 13th. So stay tuned on the website for the final dates, but those are tentative right now. And I also need to echo Katrina's comment earlier. The letter was excellent, and we got a lot of work study mileage utilizing the very clear letter this council provided the board. It was really helpful. Thank you very much.
So at the Planning Commission meetings on the 26th and 28th, public comment will be
Yes.
taken then?
Yes. There's a chance those might change. It all depends on getting those final products out the door and up on the website enough in advance, but tentatively the 26th and 28th,
Okay.
and open to any comp plan topic.
And then another question I had, and it's the allocations that we were given, the population and employment allocations we were given this year. Our growth may be greater than those allocations.
Possible, yeah.
It's possible. I mean, we don't know, but we are anticipating some growth. So the next time that we go through this exercise, how can we be, and perhaps we were, and I just wasn't elected at that point, how can we be more proactive in our allocation numbers? I know that last time you had given us a percentage that if you're a large city, you get X number, a certain percent if you're a small city, and if you're a metropolitan city, you get a certain percent. So in order to change our percentage, would we have to go to a different classification? Would we have to go from a small city to a large city?
You want to answer that?
It's my understanding that in the update to Vision 2040, when it goes to 2050, the regional growth strategy is going to be looked at as a whole. Port Orchard is experiencing the same kind of issue that a lot of the small cities are around the 4-county region. And I anticipate that, well, first, if you want to, Gig Harbor's going through the certification process right now, and so they're working with PSRC staff similar to where this city will probably be next year at this time. So I would encourage reaching out to them in terms of plan certification for now, but really in being involved in the Puget Sound Regional Council going forward in the regional growth strategy, letting them know. I would anticipate that they're going to increase the percentage to small cities. The city, I don't think Port Orchard would qualify yet for the acre size for large city or the population for a metro, but I think the Pierce cities and Snohomish are both going to ask for a larger allocation to the small cities.
I know that it's a significant issue in King County.
Everywhere, all
All
Pierce,
over.
King, yeah.
The councilwoman that represents a great deal of the rural King County is vocal about needing some adjustments in population allocations.
And I think a really good first step is having Nick on the regional staff committee, because that's where those talks really start. So having him there, being able to speak for the small cities is the first step, because Port Orchard, during the previous round of this starting, Port Orchard was not at that table at the staff level. So having Nick there, knowing what's going on and having input is really important.
Yeah, and we had a discussion at the planning directors, was it LUTAC now, meeting just last week, and we were talking about when we go to the joint planning directors and policy board meeting and have a discussion that people who are trying to influence what this looks like now, really the train sort of left the station, and it's really illustrates the importance of participating in the update to Vision 2040 when it becomes 2050. And I think that public input was gathered in 2007 or 8 is when they were doing all of the polling and questionnaires and public participation. And so most of you probably weren't here to participate.
2050?
That was when it was done for 2040.
40, okay.
So in the next year and a half, I think you're going to see that input gatherings sort of ramp up, and this is really where you're going to influence what comes down when we do this again in, 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be real mindful of that and be proactive in that.
Exactly. It's a big circle,
Right.
and we're just ending this Vision 2040 round of planning.
When I first took office, that's one of the things that Nick and I talked about was his desire to go over there.
Yeah.
And it is a resource. I mean,
Oh, it is.
It eats up one day a month of his time, but he and I both feel, and I hope all of you do too, that it's important for us to have a voice and be participating in that dialogue.
Yes.
And concerning the possibility of growing too fast for our allocation, I did reach out to our PSRC planner who's going to be reviewing our plan, and I have sent her our transportation element, and I've also talked to her about how we're proposing to address the possibility that we may grow too fast, because right now we're right on target and maybe slightly over. And so I've said, we passed concurrency and traffic impact fees. Those may have an impact on rates of growth, and we really need to evaluate this in an ongoing basis and report, and if corrections are needed further down the line, we need to make those. But I think we're close enough that it's probably around a 5% tolerance right now. But if things really ramp up at McCormick Woods and we add a whole lot of housing in a short amount of time, we could be on track to exceed our allocation.
And we don't know if that's just a spike and it's
Yeah.
going to go back down, or if that's...
Who knows when the economy will slow down again? I mean, these things are
It's
cyclical.
just like the downfall that occurred as well, that's why the horizon is such a long
long
period
one.
of time.
Yeah. Appreciate very much your time and attention to our needs.
And so as far as a letter, is everybody okay sending something, and do you want to sign it?
That we're not as dissatisfied.
We can help you with that
me to-
language. I'll sign it if Fred does.
We would like the letter from the mayor and the full council, So Nick and I work on a letter and
You could,
draft.
we all signed the original letter.
Yeah. So
We'll put something together and have it to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. All right, we're on to the Sitel System Network Assessment. Mr. Martin.
Well, thank you very much. I feel like I'm among friends. I think I know everybody here.
A little different.
And that happens over time. So anyway, tonight we're here, thank you very much, to talk about the Sitel Systems Network Assessment. That you may recall back in 2014, the council, through efforts of the budget process, set up money to go to do a assessment of our current computer system network, and to also look at the future needs of the city's infrastructure for computer hardware and the like. That took longer than we wanted it to do because we had issues that came along during the year, but we were able to do the Sitel assessment later on in 2015, where it was budgeted in 2015. We received the final copy then at the end of the year, and that's what I'm reporting on this evening. The Sitel assessment was put out, a network assessment RFP was put out. The company that bid was Sitel. There were several bidders. They're a local firm that do area work here and have worked with the Kitsap Library District and those type of things. So they had a familiarity with the area. And so this is a discussion about that report and what steps the city might want to take in the future to address some of the things that we learned. And attached to this report is the memo written by the Finance Department that is pretty much layman's terms, I would believe, of this very lengthy report that you have here. And then a finance organizational chart that would say maybe we would want to realign, the city may want to realign duties and job descriptions. And then, of course, the Sitel system report itself. There is I learned a lot in this, of course. I think we all did. As part of the Sitel system, there is a standard, industry standard for businesses and governments to do a Nessus comprehensive vulnerability scanner. That's a standard system that is used to go in and they run a diagnostics, if you will, on your computer system. And Nexus is trademarked, but it's open to all firms and companies that do this, so it's kind of like an open source that you have. So we receive that Nexus service. That's the industry standard. So if we just look at I'd like to just walk through the memorandum. I know that we did this with the Council Finance Committee at our last meeting, so Beck's heard this before. John was there, and of course Sean, they're not here. They were supportive, I think, and receptive of this report, but I'd like to go through it with you. As I mentioned, this started back in 2015, and the special was asked to perform an on-site review of current conditions and provide a report identifying where areas where immediate action was needed and to ensure continued operations, and then to focus on meeting current and future needs of the city. There was a physical exam of the existing hardware system. What was supplemented with schematics and information provided to the city. The firm was up here 2 times pretty heavily, with the first time with 3 staff people, the second time several, and then one other time they had a technician up here that ran through the system and then went back and analyzed it back at their headquarters. What we learned, and this is kind of a layman's piece of this long report, I was quite pleased to find out that their representative to the company had spent a career pretty much in IT. Well, he had, but then about 15 years ago, he had switched over to be more of the person that you talk to and really visited with about this. And his name was Leonard, and he said that he had found that his skills were, the company had decided that his skills were the best at communicating with people, rather than kind of in the techno language. So it was kind of fun to actually talk to somebody that really understood this, but really I felt talked to me at least, I appreciate it as a layperson. And he used language I could understand, and then he would step back. There was a couple things that came up over the course of the 3 times that I talked to him. And he actually said, well, let me go back to the technicians. That's new. I really don't understand it. This is the way it works, but here, I want to really get you the right person. So I appreciated that as well, because then I really knew that he was being upfront. But overall, we learned that the city is behind us in our technological investment. I think we know that. It's real easy to do deferred maintenance in IT. It's something you don't see as long as the train's running on time. You're really not worrying about the tracks it's on or the diesel that's pulling it. And of course, through the economic downturn, those type of things were really set aside. Council's been very supportive in updating all of our accounting software. That was a big 2-year project that took 6 years. And so that's all done, and so it's a logical step now to really look at the infrastructure of the city and where are we at. Now, 2 things are going on. Of course, the equipment that we have is past its useful life, but then again, technology's changed since that time too. So not only are we looking to replace it, but we're also looking at how should we set it up for the future. So we're really not replacing a system at this point. We're really setting a system up for the future. But what we found was we're behind. The consultant said cities this size are generally behind. We're no different than any place else. He said we fall somewhere along a bell-shaped curve. He said we're not the worst of the people behind. And he said you're not really at the leading edge to get out of it yet either. He said you fall somewhere in the middle, and we see this type of thing. And so we're behind, but we're behind with a lot of other people, I guess, is what he said. And he said that people are struggling to make these changes and keep up. He talked about immediate must-do upgrades, and we spent some time on that. He said, hey, there's some things you just have to get done. As a consultant, I have to tell you, you need to do this. You need to report to the people that you report to, that there are some things that you have to fix if you're going to go down, if you're going to continue to do business. Then there was some others, and he said, well, you need to do the must-do immediate ones, which I'll get to, but he also said, a logical place to start would to replace some of those things that you can do with existing staff that are quick fixes, that you just common sense things what to do, and he gave us a list of those things. And for example, he said one noticeable quick fix is replacing the city hall's wireless network Wi-Fi that keeps dropping everybody. And that's because we have a residential system here. And now I didn't understand when you say a residential system what that really meant as a layperson, even though I'm over IT, I'm the treasurer over IT. And he said, well, on a residential system in this city hall, we have 6 different residential systems. It's not a network. So when you go from planning with your laptop or your tablet and you come over to finance, you're going to get dropped off because the computer is looking for the next signal. It doesn't hand you off to the next signal. Now, he said that's not unusual for a city like this because he said you were built in 98. People put these in. In those days, everybody had desktops. If they had anything that was fancy, it was a laptop. It was supposed to sit in your lap, and you were supposed to sit someplace with it in your lap. So once it hooked onto that signal, you were hooked on. But he said nobody envisioned walking around with a laptop. Now they walk around with a tablet or your iPhone, and you're getting dropped. So he said that's what's got to be replaced. So there's a quick fix. We could get.
Some of our problem we have up here in the council chamber, we have competing signals and we're dropping off, picking up a different one, and we think we've lost the internet when we really haven't. We just got dropped from one
Antenna.
one router to the other router.
Is this thing going to work like cell phones, where it will not drop you until it grabs on? It's like monkey bars. It grabs onto a signal and then it'll let go of the other one?
Yeah.
It'll be seamless. The whole building will be seamless to one IP address.
Right.
So we have one connector, like one antenna, or
You have multiple.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Multiple.
antennas, but one,
One
to one source.
Right. And he said that everybody's, he said that's just the way it is. I mean, everybody's doing this changeover, so that's not unusual. I didn't ever understand what the problem was till I got in with him, of course. Another simple move is applying industry standard cable color coding. I mean, all our cables are black. I mean, it doesn't matter anything to us in this room, but when you go in the server closet in different places, you'll look and you'll see all our cabling is black cabling. Well, when you only have one IT person, he said, as a consultant, you may someday have to go in there and troubleshoot or hire a consultant to troubleshoot or someone to come in there. And he said, if you use standard color coding, those technicians can come in and readily trace this. He said what may take a half hour for a technician to trace that's cable coded, correctly. He said it's going to take some time to look at it. He said probably half hour. He said with black cable, he said you could be 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours as you just, there's a common one that says, hey, go do it. And so, of course, we said ordered colored cable. The most critical suggestion by the consultant is to replace the 2003 server. That is the immediate must-do upgrade. The reason for that is it still operates, but Microsoft no longer supports it. And that means that they don't do security fixes on it. So that, he said it's not if, he said it's when some random security code seeking,
We'll get hacked.
Yeah.
yeah, you're going to get hacked. Right. So anyway, he
We don't
said,
want to be in the paper for that.
right. So he said we've got to get that fixed. The other thing he talks about, it makes lots of sense, and I don't want to bore you to death, but the city should purchase warranty coverage on servers and hardware equipment to ensure manufacturer support. Warranties provide support to staff in the event of failure, and manufacturer warranties also serve as a gauge on the useful life of equipment because expired warranties point to the need for replacement. That makes a lot of sense. We haven't bought, the city didn't buy warranties because they said we don't need the $5,000 or $6,000 or whatever it was. I mean, pick whatever warranty it is, $2,200 on a server or something. Well, he said for a city this size where you have limited resources and employees, those warranties tie you back to the manufacturer who is going to work on your problem. And he said, in fact, you do have a problem where somebody has to be sent out, they've got to come on their nickel if it's under warranty. He also said that typically on a smaller city like this, if you had a warranty problem and you had a server failure, they're going to ship you a new server. He says it's cheaper for them. He said it's a wholesale cost for the server for them. And it's a lot more money to send a technician out or try to fix your server, which makes all kinds of sense when somebody tells you that. But when you're just sitting here, it just doesn't. I mean, that just seems very common. But we weren't commonly doing that. So he said, there it is. And he said, use that as your useful life on your equipment. He said, if the warranty, if the company won't warrant it, he said, why would you have it? And that makes all kinds of sense. He said, if the company that built it doesn't want to touch it, what are you relying on?
Adios.
We talked about the concerns of a fire suppression in the closet. He said not to really worry about that. He said the chances of a fire, he said keep the room clean, do the things that you should do to make sure that there wouldn't be a fire in there. He said typically, he said right now your equipment isn't anything that you would lose. And
Might help.
And he said that actually, in his experience, he's seen very few fires. The fires that he has seen, he said generally the equipment is destroyed by the time that the fire suppression system comes on. Because he said if it starts in the equipment itself, there's electronic failure, he said it's already burned up and destroyed because of the heat that it created for the problem. He said the same way if you had, he said the only thing that he could think of that would start a fire in a closet was a light bulb. And he said, when was the last time you had a light bulb, start a fire in your closet at home? It doesn't happen. He said if that happens, usually the fire is big enough that you've lost your equipment. And then he said not all fire suppression systems are going to save your equipment anyway. He said it's going to destroy it as part of that process. So He said, don't worry about it. He said, a good fire suppression system is $40,000. He said, that's going to go a long ways for you buying new equipment and getting cleaned up. He just wouldn't advise that. He also talked about the heat that we've heard about in the room. He said you can configure, when we upgrade this, hopefully with support of the council, he said you can configure your system to shut down on by a thermostat. So part of the thing we'll do is we'll say, hey, if the equipment starts to overheat, it can shut itself off. He said right now, and you can put a monitor, inexpensive monitor in there that will call it's an app now, it will call your phone, it'll say an area is too warm. We could have the on-call public works person now have an app that if that room did if the room did get too hot, he said, this is a simple fix, it makes all kinds of sense. Write a procedure where they open the door, they put a fan in there, they shut down a cooler, they open the window, they do those type of common things that he said you would just do at home, and that makes all kinds of sense. And the way things are going with moving to the cloud and that type of thing, which is the way this is all going to go, he said you're going to have less servers, they're more energy efficient, and the whole industry is moving away to get rid of heat anyway. So he thought it would take care of itself. And only the wall that we're concerned about is this one out here that's brick, that's on the outside of our server closet. Common sense says, hey, you're probably going to have maybe July and August where it'd be a concern. Heat on that wall, just be aware of that and keep your eyes open and know that you're concerned. But he didn't think that we were going to have equipment loss or data loss due to overheating. He said that's rare. Can happen, but rare. The report also includes, he said, although no best practice for IT staff to employee ratio exists, he says a rule of thumb is 1 IT employee to each 50 employees. He said it changes when you get up to a small business. He considered a small business 500 people. But he said under that, that's a good ratio to use. He said after that, you're in a whole different game with a company. So he said that we have right around 88 computer stations and computer users here, considering the volunteer police and the different workstations. And that would require probably 1.5 FTE if you're going to go to his rule of thumb, which is pretty much what he said he allows to people. He said it's a little bit different today than when we started. You have a local area network coordinator rather than an IT manager so much at this size. So you'd have someone assigned to the server closet, if you will, and the real infrastructure of the city. And then you'd have really a desktop specialist that is really the person that works with the staff who does the applications and troubleshoots. And as Rob knows, a lot of this stuff now is done off-site. People come into your computer and can do these things and do it from the back side. But that's what he says. He says a part-time desktop person and a full-time local area network. And I might mention, Rob's done quite a bit of due diligence with other local agencies. Maybe you just want to mention some of that now.
I've probably spent the last month, I've had 3 meetings. I met with Sue Whitford from the Kitsap Regional Library, Bob Hunter from KPUD, and probably the best meeting of the 3 was Bud Harris from Kitsap County. And just, all of them were familiar with the firm that we've used, say they do good work, and that we should, can trust the product that they're delivering to us. Eyebrows kind of raised when I told them we had this old server and that we do need to get on that. And really, Bud was saying that's where the county's going, is the virtual servers to the cloud and get away from the infrastructure that we have. We are, whether we recognize we need a front-end person, tech support person, whether we can leverage, which is going to cost just shy of $30,000 for a half-time person. We're still talking whether it's most likely partnerships look like whether it be the county or West Sound Utility, and if we can leverage that and get full-time support, and we share an employee, a full-time employee, that could become a reality. But if not, we should hire our own part-time. We don't have our own full-time need, but if we could leverage that into, full-time coverage that's split between two governmental agencies, I think it would be a good use of our resources.
To put it kind of in layman's terms for me, Alan, when we talk about the local area network person, in my mind, then that's a hardware person, and the desktop person is someone that works with the actual applications, the actual software, and would troubleshoot that. And again, that's where if you have something that we can't handle and you call the software firm, they get into it.
Mark comes in, fires up his computer, and his printer won't work, his mouse, can't figure it out himself. He calls that desktop person, and they help him.
Okay.
And the part-time person gives you coverage. Right now, we just have the one employee, and the desktop person would be, right now we use one of our accounting people that has some skills, but limited, to cover for our IT person when they're gone. It's not the optimum situation. So having a part-time person would provide professional coverage that would be, in case of an emergency, could be called in to keep the system up and running. Of course, hopefully would have a newer system so that, the chances of it going down would be less likely. So there's that ask as well. So the highlighted recommendations, there's quite a bit of recommendations in here, but I just tried to put it in layman's terms, and they said that, become a strong advocate for information technology services. They say you really need to keep your eye on that and know that it really is, at this point, the, lifeblood of the city. And that, through the years, we've always said, let's go paperless, and, let's do more electronically. Well, if we're going to go that way, we really have to have the infrastructure to take us that place. So this is going to give us that leap forward to say, hey, let's address some of the frustrations that we've all had with the use of our system, and now would be the time to do that. Implement Sitel recommendations according to a department work schedule, adhere to an agreed upon hardware replacement schedule. They're using the warranties and that type of thing as a schedule. Move to Microsoft Cloud email server service, move to cloud backup storage. At the end of all this, he says rerun the Nessus report following implementations to confirm the system. He said that's not a bad thing to do occasionally anyway, and it runs like $800 or something like that, so that's not inexpensive. And then he said hire or contract additional IT staff services. Those are kind of the highlighted recommendations at the policy level. There's a lot of recommendations here on the technological side. On the cost, these are our numbers in-house on what the costs would be. We have not bid these out. We did not go outside and spend time other than what we had already had in the file, if you will, to come up with this. Our figures for this would be, that's listed here, is about $91,000. It would probably, I would believe it'd be north of that.
That's not including that 65,000.
Correct.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Excluding that one.
Yeah, that's
That could
for-
wait a year.
I pulled that one out right away.
Yeah, and that's a discussion for the 2016, 2017, 2018. And so, no, that one isn't there. Although he said to do that,
Right.
because you're going to go to the cloud with the whole city. You're going to have to go with the cloud with your biggest user of IT is your financial system. But that'll be for a later discussion. So anyway, about $91,000. It's going to be north of that, I would suspect, being the treasurer. I've never run into many things cheaper. Some of these amounts are older amounts that we had in the file when we looked at this. The staff person is, as Rob said, is just at a little over $29,000. So you're looking at those costs as well. There is a possibility that, and I've been in contact and continue to talk to Sitel, they have what's called IT mapping, and they will come in and pick up from their report. We would have to rebid it to them, but they would come in and pick up the report, and they would provide consulting services to come in and make these changes and make sure we get it set up the way it should be run, might be money well spent, I believe, if in fact you timed it so you had your new desktop person and your local area network person both here, they would be part of that upgrade and improvements. So there you would get the experts that were putting together the service to impart their knowledge of the system to your current employee base. So you get kind of a bang for your buck if you're going to hire a consultant to come in and do this.
One thing Bud Harris spoke to also is many times when you're a city our size and has an IT department of one, you end up with customization. When something happens to your IT person and somebody, you know, hit by a bus or whatever, and somebody else has to come in, and you've got things that are customized, where Bud spoke to, it's very important that your systems are standardized, and by having an outside consultant come in and do this knows that, you know,
Knows the color code.
what it is, knows what, you know, industry standards are versus someone that's been working here a number of years and developed their own standards.
And I was impressed by Sitel. Many times he said, I wouldn't do that, that you don't need that, that's not that's too expensive. And I really got a good feeling. And as Bud Harris, who I've talked to on occasions on this type of things, you know, he recognizes it too, that these guys are not out there selling equipment, because they don't sell equipment. They're consultants, and they will, you know, they will advise you how to hook it up and that type of thing, but they're not selling you anything other than their expertise. Now, beyond this too, and just this is probably the quicker place to go to, is this is what we broke down. We sat down with Sitel, talked to them, and the three discussions, worked with Vince Tucker and in-house. Rebecca Nichols helped on this as well, and others. And we walked ourselves through and said, what are the simple fixes that we know of? And those are highlighted first, and that was our priority list because they were easy for us to do, and we've started on those, and most of those are finished. So we actually did start in February. We started to work on some of the simple fixes that really don't have any cost associated with them of any amount that isn't already covered somewhere under a budget item. We get into the priority ones. There you're starting to talk replacement of the 2003 server. We get into more expensive costs, but more things are going to take more heavy lifting, if you will. They're listed there. Then we go into a priority 2 that would be the next one, where we start to get the workstation applications patched and those type of things that we're told to. But at that point, we're pretty much starting to fix the infrastructure. Now we're moving, you know, out to the rest of the office. And then we had the number 3 priorities, which are, you know, kind of cleanup type of things that he said we needed to get to, that we can get to. And then there were some things that were recommendations, but when we really got into this and looked at this, it didn't really, you know, need anything that was going to, you know, impact the city. Now, they did spend, I had a conversation with them, Rebecca Nichols and I had a conversation with them that was very good. It was a shorter conversation. Vince Tucker had several conversations with them to go over, because they were very interested after they had studied it, that how did it fit together, because it was customization. And so they wanted to make sure they really understood how it fit together. That was their real effort there. So they spent quite a bit of time to go back and did change the report that came out to find out that, oh, well, now we see why that was set that way. So that was the outcome of that, and that's part of that piece.
I have a question. When we upgrade the servers, I'm not familiar with exactly all of the programs we run. Obviously Springbrook and the one that we use with Paladin. Are those resident on our server? And when we upgrade those servers, will we also need to perhaps get a different version of whatever programs we're running or something?
No, we're pulling all that data.
Yeah, SmartGov is web-based.
Okay.
It's our data. But there's things going on with communicating within in-house. So we need servers to send the print job to the printer be able to send an email. But our data storage then, instead of being in-house and in the closet, it's out in the cloud.
Currently, we're going to make.
That's where we would go.
That's
We don't have anything on the cloud. Everything is downstairs.
Including like the actual Springbrook software lives there.
Or
Or is that
there is
web-based?
Springbrook software on our, we have Springbrook in our system, yes.
Okay, so my question is, will that migrate, or will we
Yes.
need a different,
Yes.
just a different version or something that would be available?
It won't.
So currently, if something crashes, we've got problems and we're physically moving things over to new servers. Where we're going is if things are on the cloud, and they'll map that over, they'll manage all of that data and data storage to us. And so that's where a lot of our heat's coming from, is all these servers we have downstairs. We have a backup server up in Paulsbo that'll become probably obsolete. We won't need that any longer. So
Currently, each Thursday, Friday, all the police data separately and all the city data separately is put on a physical disk and walked over to Kitsap Bank and put into a
Safety deposit box.
safety deposit box. He says nobody is doing that anymore that's progressive. And then he had a whole list of why that's more dangerous than the cloud. If we were on the cloud, for example, and we lost this building, it would be real easy to just go to any bank, to the treasurer's office, and run payroll from any bank. I mean, you give me a bank lobby and I could run it. You still could get there today, but it'd be about 3 or 4 days probably, would be my guess. So those are the things you're going to gain. So that, yeah, so that anyway, I know that took a little bit longer, but we've got a lot of time and effort invested in this so far. If in fact we get the nod to move forward with this, you're going to have more time and money invested. I think it's necessary. I don't think it's all that discretionary at this point. You're in a good point to do this right now as a city. There is fund balance because we chose, by my recommendation, not to put an amount in the budget for this in 2016 till we found out what we were up against. And I said I would rather go in, get a recommendation, go ahead and now go out and bid it, find out what the costs are, write up a budget amendment, and come to you with the whereases that would list this all out, so it'd be very transparent on what you're getting for your money. And then I would come back and say, here's the process now. We bid this out. To do this, it's going to be X number of dollars. I think that probably makes a lot of sense for what we're trying to feel our way up along here and improve. But the two pieces would be the okay to move ahead to bid out these costs and to move ahead to see if in fact it would be cost effective to hire the consultant to be the lead on these changes. And then third, the piece would be the okay to actually go ahead and move to have a desktop specialist hired. And so that's where we are tonight. And as I mentioned, there's fund balance for that. I believe that, and now's a good time to do it. Your accounting system is up to date. We have good managers in place in every department that would be very receptive to this type of thing, and I think now's a good time to do it.
I think we'd really like to get moving quickly on the hiring of the employee, because we'd like that new employee part of this process and knowledgeable of this new system as we're implementing it, as well as our current employee. I think it's an important piece of it.
What do you think the timeline is before you go take it out to bid?
Pardon me?
What do you think the timeline is before you'll take it out to bid? A month, 2 months?
I don't have the big chart. I have a big chart, actually.
You do.
And it's giant.
Oh, we haven't gotten there yet.
Right. And
But
see,
it's probably,
not in our
it's not in
packet.
it's not in your packet. So here, I'll just go ahead. And, But anyway, we do have that. We would like to start this, really be into this in August or so, to start to be in a position to start doing some of the real changeover.
So physical.
Right. We would hope to have people in here working in August, September, October, that time.
So assuming you would like it up and running before year end.
Well, I think it actually runs in. We gave us some leeway into next year, if you notice that. Just because we really didn't know what we were going to run into. So, Mr. Tucker's guesstimations were much more exact than mine, so I actually expanded them. It would be wonderful to have it done at the end of the year.
And if we can afford to hire it out, it's more likely.
More likely.
That, otherwise, we have a staff of one who's dealing with current issues and implementation of, these changes.
You know, hopefully, what the goal here from the consultant says it as well, the goal here is that you get an infrastructure in place that really frees up your staff people to deal with the issues that we, really have in front of us. And one of those is like, for example, the use of cell phones, tablets, and that type of thing is a whole new world than when we ever start. We're back and trying to do this almost downstairs mainframe type of structure when really we have to move on and take off the shelf technology and put it to work.
I think these are overdue. I like what I hear. The only thing, and I know you guys will vet it, is to make sure, is Microsoft Cloud Email really the best? Is it the only one, and is it the best? And for you guys to look at that. Also, how secure is the cloud data? I mean, I'm sure it is, but we just want to be assured that putting it up there, we won't be any more vulnerable than...
When I talked about Harris to the county, that's exactly what and it's saving him FTEs. I mean, their operation is much larger than ours. And it was much, while ours is much smaller, we're much more similar to the other governmental agencies I was talking to because of the security requirements with the police and the court. They have similar operations where the library district and KPUD doesn't have those. So I'm glad I talked to those other folks, but had a lot more information that was relevant to what we were doing here. And those are the systems that the county is using.
Is the sheriff on a different system than the rest of the county?
I can't speak to their specific systems, but they are using the cloud, and they are, these exact systems we're talking about is what they're implementing.
I think we're long overdue.
I talked to him about that same thing, and he said, well, you're no more secure on your own server than you are on having to keep your own databases that you are on the cloud. And he said, you have the people that are providing the cloud service have, their security in place. And he said their whole existence is based on their security because if they lose that, they lose everything. So he said they have more, they have their whole business at stake and their whole existence to make sure that they're not hacked. Not to say it couldn't happen. But then again, you have to ask yourself, if they hacked the city and got our data, what'd they get?
I don't know.
A lot of water bills. But really, that's...
Yeah, social security numbers, phone numbers, yeah.
Which we don't have on our system.
Good. Okay.
A lot of public record anyhow.
There is one
The
service...
courts and the security, the police department are a little different animal.
And so are credit cards. The credit cards are, highly regulated, and there's a server somewhere in the building that is only for credit card use. So nothing else can get in or out of that. It's all by itself. So for security reasons. But thank you very much for your time and interest.
So what actions do we need to take, or do we as a council need to do anything better?
Not that we're going to come back with some actions at a council meeting to, one, hire an employee and change the org chart. And the plan is to have this person report directly to Mr. Martin when they're hired. So you can see that in the org chart. Two separate. One's a the back room function,
Yeah,
the
no,
front
I'm
room
finding
function.
all that. I just didn't know if you needed something more from us this evening.
And it might be, someday I'm gonna retire, not tonight, anytime soon, but there might be, to the chagrin of my wife, but that, I think, would be a chance for the city council and the city to say, what should the structure be look like going forward? Should the treasurer be the person over the IT department? Now, it's logical because that all started because your first IT departments were accounting, because that's what they started to computerize. But you have a chance in the future to actually say, should this really remain the same? But the consultant said you should have this be a flat situation rather than an IT manager. He said you're just not that big. So I'll just throw that out there that you'll have another bite at the apple.
All right, ready to move on? And I won't take 20 minutes, but I do have a couple of little housekeeping items I want to address too. So this is just really more of a discussion item that I tossed out there. I've had, an informal conversation with Larry Stokes about this. Next week, the Port of Bremerton is going to actually take this up as a discussion item at their meeting, and I wanted to talk about you first. And the reason it involves the Port of Bremerton is all the property that I've colored there is really either owned by or leases that are controlled by the Port of Bremerton, even though we utilize it and manage it for our long-term parking and our commuter parking. And I don't know, I would hope that we could implement that. This is something that's going to be a long-term goal, and I would hope that we can implement it by 2021 when we're building the pedestrian pathway. In particular, the yellow long stripe that's on the northerly edge there where it says there's 22 parking stalls. If you ever go down there during the day, everybody's using the boardwalk as their wheel stops. And we've got bumpers and things hanging out into where we want people walking and kids riding their bikes. So I think it's very logical that we put some benches and some greenery bordering our pathway. The other yellow swath that I put in there, there's 8 stalls that aren't in this picture. They're over by the gazebo. And then there's 11 more in this first slice there. So the yellow totals 41 parking stalls, and the pink is an additional 30. So this first step is to talk to you guys. Is this a desire that we would like to have a bigger park down the waterfront? This is all commuter parking here. The next step is our partners at the port, whether or not they want to, this line that's represented there, that's almost half of it. The lower half of it is their property. The upper part is DNR leases.
Can I ask something, Ron?
Certainly.
Is there any thought on where maybe those parking spaces could be relocated?
I haven't gotten to there yet, and that would be, yeah, absolutely. So that would be the next logical step if there's their desire to have not long-term parking on our waterfront, have a larger park around the gazebo, is to identify a park and ride lot and work with Kitsap Transit. A park and ride lot, you're picked up there, you pay your bus fare. All these folks are getting onto the foot ferry. They're parking on our waterfront and getting on the foot ferry and traveling to their job at the shipyard or in Seattle.
Right.
So let's identify a park and ride lot, pick them up there, drop them off. They get a free transfer. They'll actually save money because they won't be paying to park on our waterfront.
We talked about this at Economic Development on Monday, and I don't know that, we didn't talk about your parking plan, but we talked about use of the parking lot. And our first reaction was we have to do something with the long-term parking. And so that was the result of that committee, was to have a conversation with you and how do we start doing the long-term parking. And then
So I would think.
Councilman Chang had brought forth some financial information regarding this parking, and it's become aware to us now that we receive approximately $2,000 a month, or excuse me, a week. $2,000 a week.
1960? We got a figure from
I
you.
think it's a monthly figure.
Is that a monthly? Okay.
I'd have to
Okay.
go back and look.
I was under the impression that was a weekly figure, and I was under the impression that they would be giving up approximately $100,000 worth of revenue. And so that got my
It's
interest.
about 20 a year.
It's about 20 a year.
Yeah, and-
That's a different number.
Yeah.
Because when I was thinking 100,000, I'm going, where are we going to make that up? So,
And we just, really, the discussion is, what's the best for our community? You know, you're right, we're gonna give up some revenue here. And I would argue too, we make a larger park space here. I think we need to probably eliminate all of the long-term parking there. We're gonna need more short-term parking. We're gonna have more people visiting our downtown, hopefully, this park, and they're gonna need a place to park.
I think this is a good discussion. About half of what you know, last time I looked at the numbers, about half of your revenue is expensed back out against your parking by the time you consider.
so the 20 is really 10 net to us?
Yeah, I think the total.
7 times 280, 1960 was the figure that you
Yeah,
got
that was
about
that was for the
carnival.
carnival.
That was 7 days.
Yeah, but I have to go back and look
Okay,
at that.
so that was the figure that we had,
Yeah.
right or wrong. That was what
Yeah,
was
I
stuck in
don't-
our
And
mind.
this isn't anything that's gonna happen tomorrow. I just want, we need to start talking,
we need
you know,
to-
if we're gonna.
The
So,
other thing that did to me when I saw this
But
in
I
our,
know
It's just what we remembered, yeah.
No, you're right.
Whatever
the
the
other thing
context
it
was.
did when I saw this in our packet was, again, I thought about the expense and the maintenance and all of that. And have we given any more thought to a parks committee or a park commission or something? Because, you know, to prioritize what we're going to do with our parks. Because the money we put into this, would it better serve the community if we put it into one of our other parks? I mean, have we had that discussion about how to prioritize what we're doing in our parks?
what I see here, and it's whether or not the port wants to play here or not,
Right.
is, it's their property.
Correct.
And I think we're probably gonna have to help pay for a design, or maybe the majority of a design. We're probably gonna pursue, if we go through a process like we went through at the McCormick Village Park, we've got a document that Brianna or a grant writer, or, you know, Brianna's firm or someone
Right.
can pursue a very large grant. I mean, we could fund it between us and the port, but I think we can leverage it at a much higher level if we do have a professional report prepared. And then it's a partnership potentially with us and the port, and leveraging some sort of a grant opportunity to make this a very nice park space. From there, it's really the port's property, and I would hope, you know, we've got the pathway, and maybe we're gonna have some maintenance responsibilities, but the port currently has the gazebo park and maintains it and does a very nice job. It's their property. I don't think there's gonna be a change in ownership. It's convincing them that we, you know, it betters our community. That, you know, and maybe they'll continue to maintain. We're probably gonna have to clean up some of these leases, though. They have different rules than we do. And we currently, one of our expenses is, the reason we control this
As we trade it.
is we traded. And we're paying the DNR for the parking that the port's using. So maybe we're gonna need to do some trading, and I don't believe they have different, they fall under different rules than we do, and they may not have to pay for that. So there's a bunch of moving pieces in this. More than anything, I just want to talk about it tonight and say, what do you guys think? This is something we should pursue? I think it's a good idea to look at this, and if the port agrees, then, you know, as we're building our pathway, let's work towards, you know, making a better park space down here and getting the cars off the waterfront.
So there are three things. So one is, I just got a call last week from the DNR. Our aquatic land lease, which is the parking that the port's currently using, is up for renewal. So they're going to be going in and assessing upland values and we're gonna have a much higher, more than likely, a much higher value on that aquatic lease. So that's gonna come into this
The
math equation.
expense off the revenue that we're getting.
Right, and that we're swapping.
Well, we're swapping it, yeah.
Right. The other thing to comment is, in the yellow strip, remember that on the Pathway project, when we reconstruct that wooden boardwalk that was built in 1986, the plan was to push everything down, and I think we determined there was enough, we have the ability to reconstruct this parking, but we were gonna lose, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14 parking stalls, because those installs, angled stalls, were gonna, the drive aisle was gonna get moved south. So there's gonna be a
He's
reduction.
got a plan, but I got a better plan.
Well, and so that's my point, is if we did this, then that avoids having to do anything with, those other parking stalls that were, so you would have the ability to, this yellow strip is gonna be, park, a greenway and the pathway, and it could all get constructed as part of the pathway project now that the project's funded. We would just take and build the path and then do a modified design to then just, in essence, tear out asphalt and put in dirt and stuff. So,
Probably irrigation.
right, so that was,
So I think we're.
oh, and then the third thing is, to answer your question, no, there hasn't been a Parks Commission put together yet, but I know that this topic is still out there with, what are we doing with Paul Powers? What are we doing with Van Zee? What are we doing with McCormick? So I think that's going to be at the direction of the council to say, we really want to pursue this, as opposed to, we're just treading water right now on that issue.
Right, but some of those are, to me, longer-term discussions for us, and this is thank you for bringing it forward, it's a great place to start, let's talk about it. But let's immediately start doing something about the long-term parking.
I agree.
Good. And what do you think that would be? Was that?
I don't know what that's gonna look like.
One of my thoughts are,
Yeah, I don't know what that's gonna look like, and.
is looking for probably 100-space park and ride lot. The most logical ones and the easiest to make happen is sharing it with the church.
Correct.
It's working with Kitsap Transit, identifying something on a transit route that's at a church. Churches have huge parking lots that get used on
Monday to
Sunday.
Friday.
And they would love to have somebody come along and put new blacktop down and pay for striping in their parking lot. you
Right.
know? So I think it's doable.
Right, and we would still have short-term parking down here.
Right, and so in the meantime, until we're ready to build this park, I think it's a case of if we go build this park and ride lot and don't change the behavior here, people aren't gonna use it, okay? This shouldn't be this inexpensive to park here. So if we're gonna go make a park and ride lot, we're gonna make it, somehow we've gotta force people to use it.
It has to be.
We probably need to raise, more short-term parking here, and if you're gonna come down here and use it for a long-term lot, it's not gonna be $5 a day. It's probably gonna be more expensive than that if you're not wanting to. So there's some things that we can create, so that it's a little more painful to park on a
And
lot.
incentivize.
Incent them, people.
I was trying to get that word in there.
Or incentivize seamless multimodal transportation.
Yeah.
Yes.
So does that, should the city go on record with, because I feel like I'm among friends. Should the city go on record with a letter to Kitsap Transit that goes into the file, so the city would like the transit to look at placing a park and ride in the city to relieve waterfront parking issues?
Well, in addition to waterfront
Yes.
parking, the answer to that question is yes, but in addition to waterfront parking, even employee parking for employees that work downtown and employees that work in the city hall. Rather than us trying to reconfigure streets and make them one-way streets, we could ask for a little larger. And I have had conversations over the years with business people downtown complaining because their employees had to go move their car every 2 hours. And, and at the time I said, we really need a park and ride, and your employees need to be willing to park at a church and ride the bus downtown.
I think part of this equation, though, we need to make it less convenient to park on the waterfront.
Yes.
And more convenient to go from a
And more
parking ride to
convenient,
Kitsap
and
Transit.
incent that trip, because it is gonna take 10 minutes of your time to ride the bus. You know, and we need to get transit to look at, you know, that, can't pick somebody up at the park and ride that needs to catch this 8 o'clock boat, and there's 15 stops.
Right.
You know, that park and ride lot probably needs to be part of an express route, so there's some things that transit's gonna need to
Well, and
do
you're-
to
But
help
we
us.
need the dialogue started.
We do.
And you're limited to your parking spaces anyway. So you have probably commuters now that are inconvenienced that they're parking far enough away that they have to walk down there anyway. So you're only satisfying a small percentage of the people trying to get to the ferry.
Right, they would have to be, you would have to have your normal bus route that goes through the city. The park and ride has to be an express. Again, I worked on a project in San Francisco as part of the BART system, is the Vallejo and San Francisco Bay Ferry. And that seamless multimodal piece was, you're not gonna get somebody out of their car unless it's predictable
Yes.
and convenient.
Yes.
And if you
And
achieve that,
it doesn't rain in California.
Okay, so I got my marching orders. You guys are comfortable with me talking to the port and working on this long-term, but the immediate need is not just for this, but overall, we want to develop, identify and develop a park and ride lot. And then,
on Mitchell, it's a very large.
That would be good.
I wasn't going to name specific sites, but that would make sense to me.
I have a question.
Straight down the hill.
Yep.
This area is used,
But yeah, but there's also those ones on Pottery.
this area is used a lot for events. How will this impact?
What Larry Stokes and I were envisioning, and I think we've got to go through a public process with the, with the consultant, is it's more of a grassy area that, we've got a gazebo and a grandstand where families come and watch concerts and do that, it's probably the grass and some shade trees, and I don't see any reason why a farmer's market tent can't go on a piece of grass. That, it's multi-purpose, I think.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You need to define early on to get as many people interested in as you can and support to say what's the greatest use of this, so there'd be a swing space, if you will, that covers lots of different events. That's a good point.
But I don't think the greatest use is parking cars on it.
Absolutely not. No, it's bringing people to the downtown area. Well, in that, please consider some electrical supplies for it's pretty
Oh, yeah, once it
anemic
gets-
right now as far as electrical.
Yeah, once it gets to that point and you create a formal space where you would actually have vendors, you would have to incorporate a safe power source and then a water supply as well, so you don't have.
Potable water.
Yeah, so you don't have situations that occur where people illegally tap into an irrigation system and then find out later it was actually a purple pipe.
While we're talking about parks, this is just, are we going to open the restrooms back at McCormick Woods?
Can't hear you.
McCormick Woods restroom is what she's asking about.
Not yet.
Are we going to during the summer?
Yes. The reason we had to close this last time is we had people living
Stuff.
and it was becoming a problem. So we had to close it.
So they would close permanently as opposed to at night?
No, I think they were
Like closed
open
for
during the
winter?
day. I think we were.
No, they were not open during the
Oh,
day.
okay,
They
that
are
was
not
just-
open during the
That was
day.
just during a time period when we were dealing with this one individual, so I need to follow up and see where we're at on that.
Well, Central Playground seasonal, for example, it's closed in the winter and then it's open in the
And
summer.
that's where we went, is we just said, look, we're having this issue and even the police can't keep up with it, it's reoccurring. And so we're just gonna go with the other parks and we're just gonna shut it down. Just like I said, if you go to Van Zee or the other ones, they're closed right now for the season. I know it's inconvenient, but this unintended consequence of providing a habitable space, so.
I just wondered if and when they were going to open
I
back.
would say right now, the plan is when we go back into our seasonal, opening up all the restrooms that are open during the day and shut at night. And now that what we've learned, we originally kept McCormick bathroom open overnight, and that's probably gonna change. We're gonna have to get somebody that drives by there, like Dave Bolt or somebody, and he's just gonna have to make it a part of his day to open it and close it as he comes back and forth from work.
Can't do that remotely through an app or something?
They have timed locks that you can do.
Locks,
You could lock somebody in.
Well, no, they'd always be able to get out.
Yeah, I mean, we may have to go to that. And if we did that, maybe we do that as a citywide improvement, because we do spend a lot of time on
I, for
bathrooms.
one, use that convenience. I use it when I'm driving, and I use it because I walk McCormick Woods all the time, and it's just, yeah. So I'm missing it.
I'm a nature guy.
I know.
There's a big difference
Let's move
between.
it on. Let's move this along.
The nearest tree.
All right, so I just, two other quick things. I would like to form 2 ad hoc committees, and one is related to the sign code, and the other is going to be related to design standards. And both of those committees, I think I'd like to have a council member. And so would anybody like to volunteer for, and they're going to be daytime meetings, so I just, okay, so.
But you misspoke, not design standards, subdivision and
Yeah.
permit processing
Land-
code.
I'm sorry, he's right, go ahead, Nick. It's
Yeah,
not-
yeah, so it's, the sign code is one committee that we're looking to form now that we have a model sign code. And then the second committee is going to deal with both the subdivision and permit processing code, as well as non-conforming uses, conditional use permits, and variances, which we need to meet with the stakeholders and community members to discuss the proposed changes.
Okay, so the 2 committees, ad hoc committees, are going to be relating to the sign code and then development codes were the 2. So if anybody wants to volunteer, and they're going to be daytime commitments, so I know the 3 folks that aren't here today probably can't help me. So.
So which ones are we
I have
going to raise
dates.
our hand? Which one are we going to raise
So
our
I'm just looking
hand
at the
for,
folks that I have.
Clancy?
So Cindy over here wants, so you're the development codes. Okay, so Cindy's volunteering for the development codes. And so what I'm, in particular the sign codes, I'm thinking a couple people from POPSA, a couple people from the chamber, a planning commissioner, a city council member, and a couple of citizens. This is what I'm kind of envisioning.
Sign me up for sign codes.
So stands, okay.
I
So,
can't take back kicking me on the table anymore.
all right, fair enough. My last little housekeeping item, and then I'll get Randy have the floor here, is that we're seeing, we don't have design standards in our city. And we're seeing things, in particular projects along Bethel that that are in preliminary stages that seem to appear to be going to be made out of corrugated metal. And I just don't know that Bethel's farmland, you know, I'm just wondering.
So is that part of a sub-area plan?
It can be, but I think on a more high level, there can be general citywide standards. And then once you get to the sub-area, you get into more details that are specific at a geographic.
I mean, I don't want to make things overly restrictive or, you know, but at least your frontages need to look like more than
Some consistency.
Dell's, okay? Or a storm pond like Walmart's, that's your frontage improvement. It just, I think we can do better than what we've.
That's what I do for a living. I think
Well,
it's-
storm ponds are going to be difficult because they're geographically constrained to some degree, that you've got an outfall that you have to.
That's landscaping code.
So I guess what I'm asking is there a desire for us to start down a process to come up with design standards?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people with a lot of different ideas about what this city should look like. And if anything, it should be somewhat standardized. I mean, I like variety, but somewhat standardized.
Yeah, see, and I don't think it should be standardized at all.
Finally, we disagree about something.
We do. However, I do believe there should be standards.
That's what I mean.
But I don't believe, you know, and the standards are whatever, but I don't believe that all the buildings should look alike. I don't believe we should have a theme. I really like the
And that's what
eclectic.
I'm just saying,
Right.
there's things that we probably overall don't want in the community. And maybe it's
We don't want-
corrugated siding on the front of your commercial building. Yeah, I don't, you're,
I think that the key is that you give people choices, but you say you need to select materials from this menu, and there's a family that sort of goes with the community that we want stone and timber and these types of materials, but we don't want T111 or corrugated metal buildings, and we want lots of windows versus minimal windows, and they need to be spaced.
Right, we don't want the shed.
Yeah.
Right, one of the most successful I felt was City of Puyallup. It said you've got color selections from these earth tones.
You don't want to touch colors.
Okay, well, it was just earth tone, but it was in their standard. It required building to have, what's it called?
Articulation and modulation.
Modulation, so that it's just a big flat thing, and it was more in that vein where it's generic, like Nick says, a menu of,
Yeah, which we
because you
haven't
could take a
really-
McDonald's that has and they might say it's got to look like this. Well, you just do a little bit of modulation, and suddenly they can still work with it. The box facilities can work, and they can incorporate. Let's say you have to incorporate rock or timber. They can do that. Whereas if you go with a specific theme, then the trouble is you have, like I said, a Burger King or Wendy's that goes completely against what they're trying to. Their
Nothing
branding.
ugly or tacky. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're doing the branding, so yeah, you can modify with a few things. You could take a Wendy's, for example, and suddenly you add a few timbers and a little bit of rock, and suddenly it meets the standard and it looks better than the standard, so.
so for the sake of time, it sounds like this is something we desire. I'll have Nick start working on it with the land use committee, and then it'll come
Okay.
back to this body, and it'll also be vetted through this ad hoc committee for, the development code. So it won't happen overnight, but some of the things I'm preliminarily seeing concern me a little bit. And once they're built, we're stuck with them for a lifetime.
That's my concern about the sub-area plans, is we need to get those moved forward.
We'll hire 10 more planners and we'll have it done next week.
Thank you.
Okay, Brandy, you're up.
Okay, so you should have in your packets a copy of the current resolution outlining these rules governing audience comments during council meetings. And then you should also have what I call a final version and a red line version of the Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 2.04, council meetings. And the red lines have been placed in there based on the conversations that we had at the retreat, what I got out of the conversation. So if you can take a peek at those to make sure that I understood the direction correctly. And then there was a few things in here that is current practice that I have incorporated in the code as well. So it's my understanding you guys want this brought before council to talk about it. So real quickly on the Port Orchard Code, I just outlined, I added regular business meetings in front of our regular business meeting schedule. And then I also added our standard study session meeting date, time, location. And then on page 2 in the back, I just updated the agenda outline based on what our current agenda outline has been. On page 3, 2.04-100 motion in writing. It's my understanding that we've had a long-standing practice of having council members sponsor an ordinance, and it's my understanding based on the retreat that you guys wish to continue that practice, so I just incorporated in part of the code. So if we're 30 years when I'm not here, the tradition will still go on, and it's in the code and they'll know. And then 2.04-120, it's my understanding that the council is looking for regular meetings for action minutes, and then for work study session, obviously there's no action taken, so I would assume you would want some sort of minutes taken at a work study session, and I just put that down as a brief summary. And And then on page 4, 2.04210, city employees requested to attend. That has been in place since 1966. Thought it was a little outdated. I did look at other council meetings at other jurisdictions, and this is the language that I had that basically says, which is what we've currently been doing anyways, the mayor determines what staff's going to be here. However, it's at the leisure of the council to say that they're not going to move an item forward if a particular department director was not present. So that can be modified, of course, as you wish. And then just some 2.04220, just added a regular council meeting at the very beginning, and then changed councilman to council member. So I'm just looking for direction on that part as to what changes you want to make, and then I can bring that forward at a future meeting. And then I think you guys wanted to have more of an in-depth conversation on the resolution for audience comments during council meetings. I think at a very minimal, if you look on the resolution page, the second to the last whereas, we're no longer offering cable cast of our meetings, so at a minimum that should be at least stricken and maybe added that it's on our website and it's being video recorded. So there was some discussion whether you wanted to have the first... Yes, that it's being recorded. And then I didn't know if there was some discussion, I think it was kind of split, is the first meeting, the first citizens' comments to be strictly on the business items or items on the agenda, and then the second citizen comments to be anything. So this current resolution doesn't address that, and looking for council to see if that's the desire.
Brandy, is Exhibit A new?
No.
Okay.
The resolution and the exhibit is existing.
Where these items are coming from, that we've got a list of about 30 or 40 items that were left over from the retreat that we said we would pick away at a work study. So that's where these are coming from. Comments? Are you reading?
I don't actually have strong feelings about limiting the audience topic in the beginning and the end of the meeting. It seems to me that some citizens may have a convenience where they have to speak about something at the beginning, and if we limited them just to items on the agenda, that may be inconvenient for them. It seems currently, though, we do have comments and we tell them it's for items not on the agenda. So maybe we need to clarify that. I know some people expect that they can comment at the appropriate time on every business item, and we haven't encouraged that.
What we learned in the Roberts rules, that shouldn't be the case. That's the business meeting portion. Where the exception to that is public hearings, where we're, accepting testimony.
Yeah, and some of it is educating the audience, I guess.
Other thoughts? According to this rule too, if you speak at the beginning, you don't get to speak it.
But you get to, according to the rules we have right now, Exhibit A, you get to speak once during a council meeting, and we do not adhere to that. So we need to adhere to our rules. If we're going to have rules, we need to adhere to them. So I would look to, again, the chair, who's ever chairing the meeting, to, when we announce citizens' comments, remind them of that. At the meeting that I do not believe you were here, it may have been last week, they become a blur. But we had a citizen who wanted to speak during citizen comments at the beginning, and he felt his comments were going to be more than 3 minutes, and he had a disability, and so he asked to have all of his 6 minutes.
4 minutes.
Well, he said 4. He thought he got 2 and 2.
Yeah.
But he meant.
We didn't correct him.
We did not correct him. He wanted all of that at the front of the meeting. So there is a perception that everybody gets to talk twice and they get double the amount of time.
We either need to modify these rules or enforce the rules as they're written.
Correct.
So, and I wasn't aware of this rule until we read it.
Oh, yeah.
So you're talking about number 2, you say limits them to once per meeting. I could see it as limiting once per citizens event. So I could see where they could expect at the beginning and the end. We could make it clearer, but I could see how they could interpret this, that every time you have audience comments, they get to speak.
Then I think that's something that we would want to address.
I wouldn't interpret that.
Well, and I think, if I may jump in, so these were created in 2006, and I believe the second citizens' comments portion was added during the Coppola administration, which is in 2008 to 2012, so.
It hasn't been addressed.
Correct. So this has not been amended to address
And that
that.
was the practice of the county, and so we changed to that. But the difference at the county is it's on the business items at hand at the beginning of the meeting and any issue at the end of the meeting.
Sort of the good of the order type thing.
Good of the order items. So we adopted part of what the county was doing in both ends of the meeting, but not exactly what the county's doing. And it's our meeting, so
We can do what we want.
actually it's your meeting. You can do whatever you want. I just need to know what the rules are.
I know that other boards that I sit on, the citizens' comments are just at the end. There are not citizens' comments at the beginning.
In the city of Edmonds, they have citizen comments just at the beginning. You can talk about anything they want to talk about, but then they're done.
There's nothing at the end.
Nothing, yeah.
That's not a bad
That's not a bad idea.
process, actually.
And in your current code, if you look at the red line version, it says that citizens' comments is only addressed once. And again, that's because it was added later on, but the code wasn't updated. So the code could remain the same instead of amending it to the current practice. So if you wish to only have citizens' comments once at the beginning, that's already in your code.
Where?
It is page 2, 2.04060, and I added number 11.
Number
Okay,
11
that's
is
what I was
added.
going to say, that's,
Yep.
okay.
That's because that's our current practice.
Correct, so that's what you put in, okay. I wondered if it was written somewhere else.
Seems to me, if citizen comments were at the beginning of the meeting, it'd be more convenient for those making the comments, they wouldn't have to stay on. Sometimes the meetings go on till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. If they were waiting to have their comment till the latter part of the meeting, that's pretty late for some people. If you had one citizen's comment period, there would be no misinterpretation of how many times you get to speak. You get to speak once during that, that's it.
I guess, playing devil's advocate, speaking for Jerry that's sitting in the audience, her comments are typically raised from the meeting itself.
Yeah, there has been that opportunity.
It's a punctuation at the end of the meeting, so I'm just putting it out there that a lot of the comments come because they want to, so you'd have to come back to the next meeting and say, at the last meeting you said this, and
I like the compromise, or I don't know if it's a compromise, but I like the suggestion that you posed, for example, that the first time it would be strictly on the agenda, and then at the end of the meeting it would be on any topic, sort of a good of the order type thing. So there would be 2 opportunities, although it wouldn't be about everything at both opportunity.
Which then presents the scenario where somebody comes with an issue and they want 2 3-minute segments to talk about wayfinding signs or whatever. That's not on the agenda
and they have to wait to the end of the meeting.
to get their other 3 minutes.
Or,
No, what Fred's saying is,
Well,
they can only,
Right.
the first comment period, they can only speak to something that's on the agenda.
Right.
So you can't have somebody coming in that's just railing against a staff member. and
Until
then-
the end.
But they can wait to the end of the meeting to do that.
Oh, that doesn't
That's
happen,
in-
does it, Mark?
No, that seems like a reasonable approach. If you want to,
That was the dialogue at the
Retreat.
retreat.
Yeah.
And so that we're just bringing it back for concurrence before and cleaning up these resolutions.
Is that way what they're saying is it's relevant to what's going to be discussed. So then the council is hearing people that have a concern about, hey, subdivisions.
Correct.
Now, if there's a hearing on it, then
All
we
bets
wait
are
for
off.
the hearing. But if it's just a comment on the topic, you know, the pathway contract, then they can say, hey, I think you're wasting money. But then if you want to just have this kind of other forum, you have to wait through the meeting and then you have your 3 minutes. That seems like a decent.
Cindy?
Was it somewhere along the line, I remember hearing, maybe it was from Ann, I'm not sure, that someone could only speak once? Was that part of something that was being considered? Do you remember that?
That was, well, actually,
Where did that come from?
that was
On the dais.
our body. So if Clancy's dominating the conversation tonight, Clancy doesn't get to speak a second time until everyone else has provided an opportunity to speak. Clancy gets to speak a second time if the chair recognizes him.
If you have
But
exceeded the 30-minute total.
The two,
No, we're not talking
We're
about
not
comments.
we're not talking about citizens' comments
Oh,
now.
okay.
We're talking about Robert's Rules training. That
oh, yeah.
the chair's not supposed to allow
Yes.
Clancy to talk a second time until everyone else has had an opportunity
And-
to provide input.
Right, and what
It's a
we want to
different
remember is that this is the business meeting for the city council that's held in the public. It is not a public meeting. And that was the piece that Ann was making very clear to us. And so when we have comments to make about a business item, we should gather our thoughts and state them, and then it's not a debate, you know, and then everybody else gets to say what they think, and then you vote. It's not a conversation that goes back and forth. That was the point I thought she was making.
You're correct. And when you speak to an agenda item, and we're off topic here, but this is relevant to our meetings. So you're supposed to be speaking to your position on the
Correct.
subject matter.
Not to a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to a person. You're
Speaking to
speaking.
the chair and you're speaking to.
And we haven't done that. We've been much more informal about addressing a concern that someone on the other, and I'm not taking a position, but if you've ever watched Bremerton, it's just very formulaic. It's like they have their announcements. One by one, they go down and every council member says something and then they vote. It's the most boring meeting you've seen.
I do like
But
the
it is efficient.
informality and the you know.
Yeah.
We have a very functional meeting, I believe, but the training was important. But back to the subject matter at hand, what is the consensus here? I'm hearing, we're confirming what we heard at the work study, that we're going to clean this up and that the citizens' comment period is going to be on the agenda items at the first point, and then anything to the good of the order or any topic matter at the end of the meeting?
That's what we discussed.
That's what we discussed. So it's your meeting though, and you'll be asked to vote on this amendment.
I think we should try it.
Okay?
What, just, I'm unclear. Are we trying that the first citizen comments only be on agenda items and the second citizen comments be open for the good of the order?
And any subject matter. Or it could be something on the agenda, something happened in the meeting, or the color of the sky.
And remember that, so you were saying, so the meeting is the council's for the business items.
Correct.
You still have the presentations and mainly the public hearing, where we may start seeing more public hearings.
Correct.
That's the time for the general population to comment at the public hearing.
And that's unlimited time.
that's
They
unlimited.
have, yeah.
Unlimited time, yes.
Which Mr. Palmer knows.
Does it mean that the meeting is unlimited?
No, no. We're
Public
talking
hearing,
about-
public hearing.
He was speaking to public hearings.
Okay, oh,
I
right,
was just
right.
speaking
Okay.
to some nodding in the audience, just to
Yeah.
remind people that if there's an item on the agenda that's a hearing, you have that opportunity to speak. Otherwise, what Beck was saying is, and I know there's a lot of issues last year, but what we learned with Robert's rules is the meeting is the council's meeting, and so there is this conversation that, like, Rob has to manage the fact that not one person is dominating like I'm doing right now, and that you just get to speak, and then everybody has to speak before we can go back to back, for example, and then that's the end of the business discussion.
So if you have a comment period at the beginning and a comment period at the end, would you want to have citizens be able to speak at both?
That's what we need to.
I don't think, what I've heard here is that someone could speak at both ends. The first comment period would be limited to those items on the agenda, germane to the agenda.
The agenda.
And then the business meeting at hand.
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing.
That each citizen comment period would be limited to, we have
30
one
minutes.
that says 30 minutes.
It could.
Are we going to have that in there?
Or is it 30 minutes total for the meeting?
30 minutes.
30 minutes, is it 30 minutes total for the
For
meeting?
both of them or for
Also
each of them?
between the two of those.
Yeah, my
I mean,
understanding,
that's just a question. I don't know the answer.
I thought it was 30 total.
Well, this was created
This
when
was
there was only
created when
one.
We had when we had one citizen comment
Yep.
period.
If you're doing 30 minutes on each end, you're adding an hour,
Yeah,
potential
that's-
hour to the meeting.
It should be.
That's the other thing.
So then.
So should this be amended to 15 minutes each period?
There you go.
Or,
Is that?
It's hard to say, because sometimes there's nothing, and then sometimes there's something,
Whole
so,
bunch.
yeah, I don't know that we can
It
really,
would just be amended to 30 minutes total for the meeting.
Between the two periods?
so if
So if we had 20
That's
minutes
flexible.
at the first comment period,
or we could just have everyone start yawning.
Randy would just keep track, so if they took 20 minutes in the first one, you're only going
10 minutes. Yeah.
And I just say, excuse me, but the
Yeah.
citizens' comments have extended the 30-minute time period pursuant to blah, blah, blah.
Before you
Council,
start-
what do you proceed to do?
Before you start that second comment, Randy could report to the mayor every time and saying, we now have
Per day.
7 minutes remaining for the second.
Oh, I can do that, my department directors report, because they speak after me, so.
Yeah?
Okay.
The other thing we can do as we introduce that is we can remind the citizens that there are many ways to communicate with council. It doesn't have to be done at the meeting necessarily. We can take written comment, they can email us. We're all available by phone. It's not like, that is their only opportunity. There's many different medias to contact and communicate with council.
And that's what that older ordinance said, it's like, you've got this period, you've got letters, email, phone call.
So. yeah.
So I can address that in the revised whereas leading up to the reason why for the change.
And is there any discussion on the minutes, type of minutes she's taking? That they're gonna,
The regular minutes, the regular council meetings, do you want to go to action only? Which means any motions that you take is what it is. There's not going to be any discussions in there. There's not going to be any citizens' comments written in there, department directors' reports, all of that stuff is,
there's a
I mean,
report- there's a
action
recording
minutes
of it.
is
That
just
was-
what's
that was
action
the-
taken.
That was Ann's
That was
suggestion.
that and suggestion from our training that since we're recording these meetings, that it's, we're using a lot of staff time to write narratives versus action minutes.
Cut and paste.
What, I don't really have an opinion on it.
I bet you do.
The opinion I'm going to state is the minutes that came last month from the Land Use Committee and the minutes that came yesterday from the Economic Development meeting, I liked.
You like the utility committee.
Oh, the Utility Committee. Utility Committee.
The difference, I think, there, those committees versus this meeting is, the general council meeting is that we're only voice recording and some, not always does that tape recorder. So those minutes are much more meeting, and not everybody was present. So it's sometimes important that you have detailed minutes for those.
What I'm
for those
saying, and these
committees.
were what I'm going to call summary minutes. They were not detailed in that so-and-so said this and somebody said that. They were summary minutes, and I really appreciated that. I knew what happened. I didn't know what words were attributed to Mr. Dorsey or what
Okay.
minutes were attributed.
So what I'm
to
hearing
Cindy.
is action minutes for the council meetings and this meeting, and summary minutes for our committee meetings, so that the members of the committees that weren't present
And work study.
and
It'd be summary for work study because you don't take action at work
Okay.
study.
Actually, so for committee meetings, though, at least with my committees, the committees have told us, based on a vote of the committee members, what they want for their committee. So,
okay.
We didn't vote it economic
land use,
development.
they
They
all
did.
wanted
Summary or what?
summary, yeah.
Yeah, which is.
Well, which is
what
what
we're
we're
at.
Or no, sorry, action, they wanted action minutes for land use, but,
You can't take action at a committee, so it's just summary minutes.
Gotta be summary.
That's what I would
They wanted
recommend
a
you
really
call it.
brief or what?
They wanted a short summary.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's a difference, I mean, committees.
Or they could give direction. Direction minutes is
Yeah,
basically
topics,
what it
and
is.
You're just summarizing, whereas on the council packets, if you went away from the action, what you're really doing is, what they are is, the clerk has to take every staff report, cut and paste the summaries in, and then add a little bit, and that's just adding a lot
A lot
of
of work.
stuff.
To something that's already on a video.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay.
And then just one last thing, 2.04.210, city employees requested to attend. Is that language sufficient? The chair shall assure that all regular meetings, workshops, special and emergency meetings of the council are appropriately staffed. While the authority of the requiring department heads to attend the council meetings rests with the mayor, the council is free to refuse to take action on particular agenda items when necessary department directors are not present. Previously, it said the city clerk, engineer, attorney, and chief of police or such officers or employees of the city shall, when requested, which contradict each other, attend all meetings of the city council and shall remain in the council room for such length of time as council may direct. So,
The treasurer had enough clout then to stay out of the list.
I know.
We're comfortable with that language that she's modifying?
I'm uncomfortable, when we're done here, I'm comfortable about one thing.
Okay.
We didn't resolve whether a person can speak twice or once.
I think we were fine with
Twice.
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 It's just
Because it's
we
Two
defined-
different topics.
Because they're different topics potentially.
I missed
So, as long as they talk to an agenda item on the first one, then they can come and rail against Nick in the second.
If there is enough time left.
If there's time.
that's it.
I'm glad
We haven't had an issue with that. So, couple minutes left. Anything for the good of the order?
Yes, or a question,
Question?
a question for the good of the order.
Okay.
Yeah, we could talk about that, but also, did you have any update, or did Mr. Morton have any update on the quitclaim deeds that were brought forward?
Mr. Dorsey.
At this point, the attorney's been issued a routing number to review, so that when it comes back on the agenda on the 22nd, they'll have the ability to have some sort of brief conversation when asked.
So, and we have to remember, it's my understanding of this, is, remember we cleaned up the operating agreement and we created a joint entity. The city had, there's some convoluted deeds, a number of them, from multiple parcels. We're cleaning that up, and I believe it's all being transferred to the city, because that's where all the debt is. Then the next step is gonna take the debt and the property and put it into the entity, because so it's no longer on our books. Because right now, we're solely responsible for the debt, but we have a partner. And the intent is, the partner's responsible for the debt, but with the debt goes the assets. But we gotta clean up the asset. It's a title mess.
Yeah,
This
no,
was
I-
this was a cleanup item based on the new operating agreement. Now, the only issue that's come up since the last meeting is that you have two surveyors that are, disagreeing. One who prepared it said, this cleans it up and this is perfectly fine. And then another one saying, well, there may be some issues with your subdivision code, and that's what Sharon was really looking at, is there really an issue, or is this just one of those situations where we're just best to stay on this path because it isn't a perfect world, and this just resolves it. And so that's really what we're looking at. And it's interesting when you have two professional surveyors that are respecting the community, they differ in opinion. And, it's like a boundary dispute. You have two surveyors like, oh, no, I think it's this, and I think it's this. And at this point, we have to determine, you know, what's our risk to go here or what's our risk to go here?
Yeah, but it's all property in the joint venture.
Yes.
That's,
It will be.
that was one of the pieces that I wanted to make sure we looked at, because I no longer have those quitclaim deeds in my possession. I left them in my packet. But I could look at the quitclaim deeds and see where they were being transferred into our name or into whatever to clean them up.
Those are the 4. There's
Okay.
a 5th deed you've not seen.
Okay, because one of the deeds I saw, one of the quitclaim deeds I saw granted to the city of Port Orchard and West Sound Utility District.
I thought they were all either from West Sound or Kitsap Transit or Veterans to.
When I read those, I was following the trail, and I said, okay, these are all clearing this up, putting it in our name, and then there's this one that's putting it all back.
Sharon's on it. I don't think we have to resolve this tonight, but
Yeah.
it will be.
I just wanted to make sure it went to the,
Before it comes back before you.
My understanding.
And that week's packet is still on the website, so if you wanted at your
To look
leisure to
and
go
see,
back and
'cause
look.
I don't remember, I wasn't reading descriptions.
My understanding is they were all coming to the city, and then the city would then put them all into that joint venture.
Venture, and that's what I've heard from the mayor, that's what I've heard from Ms. Martin, that's not what I remembered seeing.
And we'll need to get that corrected if that's not the case, or explain why it's the way that it
And
is.
I could just have looked at it wrong.
Okay, city's got something for the good of the order, 2 minutes.
Okay, so we received this in our mailbox. First Christian Church was asking to have some late charges waived. Apparently, they have a great record of paying their utility bill on time, and something happened with this last one that they didn't receive it. So I'm wondering if they're asking us to remove the charge. How do we address that?
I think the treasurer's answer is going to be we can't, but I'll let him answer.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
So we have, it's a customer service issue. First Christian Church claims that they never received their last utility bill, and the only way they knew about it is when they received the bill with a late charge on it. They've apparently been having some mail stolen out of their mailbox, and they have this long history of having paid their utility bill on time. They've paid their bill, but they haven't paid the late charge, and they're asking us to waive the late charge, given their history of having paid on time, and with the current problem of having mail missing.
But I think it goes on in that last paragraph where they do say that they had it, but they didn't get it paid in time. Isn't it the second sentence in the 3rd paragraph?
Well, that's because they didn't receive the bill. I think that's what,
Can you read the last paragraph?
I sure can. After checking our records, I called your billing department, and a very polite woman, Kathy, answered my call. I explained the situation and said we would pay the invoice immediately, but I did not believe we should have to pay the $118.47 in additional charges. We always pay our bills in a timely manner and have never been delinquent. Kathy said there was nothing she could do because it was not the city's fault. We are petitioning you to reverse this fee as we are a client with good payment history. A check was mailed March 8th to pay the full $1,184.71 amount. The reason they were explaining, though, is that they hadn't received the bill, and that's because of stolen mail, they assumed.
When's that date of that letter?
March 10th.
I've seen that.
Yeah, so to me, it seems like they would have paid the bill on time had they received it. They're assuming some mail was stolen because it seemed like she was saying in there they've had some other mail problems, and that they have a record of paying their bills on time. They just didn't receive it. They didn't receive their bill until there was a late charge added to it.
Yeah, that would be true.
Right, so they're asking us to waive the late charges because of their history of having paid on time, and assuming that they didn't receive the first bill because of some mail being stolen.
The city, Cindy, the city code's very specific. and it says that they didn't pay their bill on time, and it doesn't provide any statutory or Port Orchard Municipal Code authority for anyone in the billing department to waive fees, fines, forfeitures, or payments.
But
Yeah,
can
I'm
the
not-
city council do that?
No,
No.
because the code doesn't allow it.
It'd be like me going to Visa. I've had my Visa bill stolen, and
Your code does not
They
say,
charge me.
your code doesn't say the city council can determine whether or not a fee is due and payable. I mean, unless you change the code.
So it's different than a credit card bill that you can argue with them usually, and they'll give you a one-time price. I mean, I'm not saying we should argue. I'm saying that it's a different issue of our bills versus.
It's unfortunate. This is unfortunate.
Can we,
But this happens a lot.
I paid it.
Oh,
I've been late myself, and I have a good payment history.
Alan, can we offer them a remedy of receiving their bill
Electronically?
electronically via email so that we don't have to worry about it being stolen out of a mailbox?
I think that's an excellent solution. But I don't, Cindy, I don't, the city count, the city
just
Port Orchard
asking.
count.
I'm just asking the question. This was just in our mailbox. I'm asking what we are able to do.
Oh, I don't
That's all
have,
I'm
I
asking.
don't have, I thought you were making the case, I'm sorry for that, but, you know, we have, it's unfortunate from time to time, we have this where people do ask if they can have a fee waived. It's very common that when people miss a payment, that they ask for some kind of disposition, and obviously Kathy was very polite and explained the situation. So that's where we're at.
That is a good solution.
Right, the $118 is over here, but we need a remedy so that they're not in that situation again.
You have to get a postal box or something to solve their own
Right.
problem, yeah.
Or we can send it to them electronically if they have the ability to receive that, if that's convenient for them. And then I think that we draft a letter
Just explaining.
just explaining that statutorily, there's nothing we can do about it.
We have standard language.
Correct,
So
whatever.
You have a letter then.
Well, it's just that I can write a letter if you like me to.
That's a lot of water. That's a bigger bill than mine.